up.
That sounds good. You sound good. How's that?
I do sound good. All right, right on. Here we go.
Right on.
He's going to record this clacker. I don't even know what you do with these. What? Dude, it's like, I don't know, I'm feeling all lethargic. All right, we're rocking and rolling, Craig Kohler.
Let's do this.
I know, man. You're without your better half.
Yeah, well.
Is it your better half?
I don't know. Sometimes it feels like an anchor.
No, but that's good, though, because now we can just sit here and we can have serious talk.
We have a real serious talk. No dick jokes. Nothing about defecating in his wife's privates. Anything like that. I feel I've just a little callback to our first episode with you. But,
yeah, dude. Good fucking times.
Oh, I love that fucking wild card, man. I love him. He keeps he keeps things interesting for me for sure.
I'm surprised you guys are able to be on the radio.
Yeah. I mean, it's it helps to have a producer that's kind of on it, you know. But we're pretty good about walking that line. And now that we're doing kind of an uncensored presentation, you know, online, we kind of can get some of those wiggles out a little bit.
Yeah, how many online shows those are separate than the radio shows, right?
Yeah, so actually the radio the station just went through a buyout. So all new ownership. We've been on about a 2-month sabbatical from terrestrial radio, which has been kind of nice. It's given us an opportunity to kind of ramp up, you know, the online show, do a little bit more with some visuals. The fans' reactions to it have been great, you know.
Yeah.
I still want that presence on terrestrial radio, for reasons that are kind of they have nothing to do with the idea of radio. Like it's for me, it's more about who I'm potentially reaching that I otherwise wouldn't be. I know who I'm reaching online. I'm reaching like-minded people, and one of the scariest thoughts for me with our show is that we just start to exist in this vacuum, in this echo chamber of like-minded people, and we're never really challenging thought, you know?
Yeah.
But now with this new ownership, and before the old ownership, the station was primarily like gospel radio on one side of the building, and then on the other side of the building was kind of some sports talk, kind of some business talk. It was just really kind of a mix-up of a bunch of different things. But now with the new station ownership, it sounds like they're going to have a bunch of conservative talk radio, so you might have Sean Hannity on there or Glenn Beck or whatever, and then you're also going to have SEC football. So to me, like, it's like a kink of mine to think about possibly being sandwiched in between those things where, you know, Joe and Ledoux might be listening to, you know, Glenn Beck say something, and then all of a sudden Terrence McKenna comes in and starts talking about TNT, and then we go over to Alabama-Auburn. You know, like, to me, I love the idea of who I might be getting to. So.
Yeah, just that whole flow. So, you just like the idea that people will just kind of stumble across you that wouldn't otherwise do that.
Totally. I mean, there's other benefits, you know, just having a studio when big wigs, big hitters come to town, having that space, that professional space. It gives you a little bit of cachet, I guess, a little bit.
That's nice, especially when you're sitting down with people, right? Just to have like a good space to do that in.
Yeah, man, we interviewed, you know, Senate candidates last year. I mean, we had people come in, authors. It's a lot easier than saying, "Hey, come to my basement." You know, ignore the gimp in the corner. He'll get you a drink if you're thirsty. But you know, no, it adds just a little bit of
professionalism there.
Professionalism for sure.
Yeah, no, I can dig it. Do your your episodes, you guys record those, right? And then you release those as well as a podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, we've kind of what we've been doing online. They haven't been released as podcasts. We have there hasn't been a podcast released since the 30th of September. But we just recorded a bitch and went out in Kansas City with a good buddy of mine, who I've done some medicine ceremonies with, who every time I talk to, the dude's just profound, you know, just profound.
Yeah.
So we had like a 3-hour sit down with him that I'll release as a bonus probably next week.
Oh, right on.
And then we'll get back into rolling out. It'll be more of an internet show that's going to air. I mean, an interview show.
Yeah.
On terrestrial radio.
Yeah.
So it'll be a little bit more all squeezed within an hour, a little bit more kind of facts hitting you, something that
Yeah.
people can go and get some quick clips.
Yeah. So that's really your focus.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll see what we do with the internet show. I mean, it could be released as a podcast as well, but we've got a lot of visual stuff that's happening with it as well that might kind of miss the podcast crowd a little bit. So.
Yeah. You could save those and just release those on YouTube.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on they are on YouTube. They're
Are
just
they?
not on any iTunes or anything like that. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, because I know you have a YouTube channel. I just didn't know you were also, because you're doing those lives on Facebook, right?
Facebook, YouTube, Twitch,
All at the same time?
Twitter.
Oh, so you're just like broadcasting to all those at once.
Yeah, we broadcast to like 4 or 5 different
Oh,
different
right
deals,
on.
and then it's
I
just
didn't know
up
you could
there.
do that.
Yeah, for
Fuck,
sure,
dude.
You need to be on it for sure.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because it's just one live stream.
And
that
Twitter's
goes to all
actually
those-
probably the one we need to be, really focusing on, because
Which one?
Twitter.
Twitter?
I mean, with Periscope, because you can get to anybody, and the right person sees you, man. Like, I think it affords you the most chance of going viral with your content.
Really?
I think so.
I didn't know that.
And I've never been a Twitter guy. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I
not a
just got
Twitter
on
guy
Twitter
either.
like 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
But at Steve's, recommendation, because I think that's kind of where, Steve's got his persona kind of grew out of an AM radio show, calling in, writing emails, and then kind of having a following on Twitter. And so he convinced me to get on there, and I like it for what it is. It's kind of a cesspool of dog shit too. So like, if you got to kind of build your feed of people that that you want to see, but like most of the people that I follow are psychedelic contributors.
Yeah.
People, artists, things like that. So
Right. Yeah, I need to maybe just do more with Twitter, because I'm just not. Like,
I don't even tweet really.
Yeah.
I just kind of get on there to kind of see what the news is.
Yeah, I usually just share to Twitter from Instagram.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean,
For sure.
I have like no followers, or I don't
I don't have a bunch either. I mean, it's all like local friends,
Yeah.
Like I think I got, I don't know, Shane Moss retweeted me or something. And I was like,
Yeah.
or Duncan Trussell. That's it. Yeah, Duncan Trussell
Dude,
retweeted.
Duncan
I'm like, oh,
Dude, those are fucking. Both of those names are like pretty big names in the space, right?
no doubt. Shane's my guy. Like I'm a huge Shane Moss fan.
Yeah, dude. So you guys saw him up at the symposium.
We did. Yeah, we had an opportunity to go hang out with him. And well, what was interesting is he showed up. I was like drinking in some kind of DMT talk from one of these, PhD candidates from Michigan that were studying where DMT is found in the body. And then I saw Shane kind of walk in. So I'm sitting in an auditorium. I'm sitting above him, and I'm texting Steve. I'm like, dude, Shane just walked in. Get him, because Steve wasn't in the auditorium. And so next thing you know, Steve's texting me back. He's taking a selfie with Shane. And, I was like, oh, that's awesome, And Steve was like, we're good, man. We had a chance to talk to Rick Doblin there. I got a picture with Shane. This weekend's a success. Everything's good. We ended up going later on that evening. They had a show called Magic Medicine.
Okay.
Which follows Dr. Robin Carhart Harris, who is a researcher at Imperial College in London. They do a lot of psilocybin studies. And this movie followed them doing psilocybin studies with people with treatment-resistant depression. And what was kind of interesting about it was a really objective look at it. So my heart's racing right now. It's weird. I'm just trying to sit with it. So basically, they took out of like 22 people, 18 of them had like drastically reduced their depression or had gotten rid of it completely. But the movie itself had focused like on like the 4 that didn't have great luck, or the 3 that didn't have great luck.
Oh, really?
And so it was like this really objective look, which was good. It's great. I think that's an important thing for people that are kind of inside the psychedelic circle that can see how beneficial these things can be. I think it's important that we also, if we're trying to change minds, that we're not just, we give them an objective look at it.
Right. See it all. I'm guilty of that, because
Me too,
it's
man.
like, oh man, it's all fucking great. It's all.
Well, it changed my life in such a profound way that I am too.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to be a charlatan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yeah.
we go to this movie premiere. It was awesome. This guy, oh man, can't think of his name. This other professor from Johns Hopkins came up kind of after the movie, answered some people in the crowd's questions about psilocybin. And their studies aren't the same as the ones from Imperial College, but there's a lot of crossover there. So he was able to kind of answer some of the questions that came up watching this documentary. And then, and I had seen like this 6'5" dude that looked like he was dressed looked like he was from Seattle in 1996, kind of like walk in the shadows, and I'm like, oh, that's got to be Shane.
Yeah.
That's just kind of his MO. And so I saw him, and as the movie ended, like he was walking out, I ended up like 2 or 3 people behind him. Steve had gone to the bathroom ahead of him, and then I heard Shane kind of tell this gal was just trying to get a piece of him, and Shane was like, hey, okay, great, I got to go to the bathroom, and then Steve went in there, was talking to him, came out, and then Shane was like, hey, we're going down to a tequila bar. So we go down to this tequila bar. So Steve's like, I walked out, Shane had already left, and Steve's like, Shane just invited us to this tequila bar down the street, and I'm like, oh, really? I was like, they're going to give me the home field advantage and push the fences in? Because, dude, me on tequila, like, that's me at my most confident, my most chatty. I'm like, perfect. This is going to be great. So we end up going over there, and it was just Shane there at that point. It was Shane and us, and we order up some tequilas, man, and we just hit it off right out the gate.
Yeah.
Steve cuts a joke. He's got Shane laughing, and if I know my partner, he just wants to make the funny man laugh. Like that's his deal. I know so as soon as he got that first laugh from Shane,
it was like a drug.
It was on for sure. Yeah, he was hooked. And so that's awesome. Like we're having a good time. And then one by one, the people at the bar that were sitting there, they left. So now it's literally just me, Shane, my 2 buddies that were, Steve, and then our buddy that came with us, Tony, up to Michigan. So we're sitting there, and then one by one, all of these researchers that put on this whole symposium just start coming in the bar.
Oh, nice.
Dude, it was awesome. So, like, on top of that, also these other contributors, you might have seen here recently, like, there's been a big DMT study that was just published, just released from Imperial College. Dr. Chris Temmerman was the guy who ran that study, and he was actually giving those the notes from all of these studies, basically unveiling the science at the Psychedelic Symposium. Well, like last week, it just went out, so it's been shared with everybody who shares any kind of psychedelic content.
Yeah.
And there were some questions that I was wanting to ask him there. I had no idea he was going to be there. So he walks into the bar, and then the dude from Johns Hopkins walks in. And so it was like everybody that was there except for Rick Doblin, because he'd already moved on to like the next conference or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're sitting at this table, and we're all just sharing stories. And what was really cool in that moment was that every single one of these people, doctors and, PhD candidates, people whose life work is kind of centered around psychedelics, they were just as interested in my anecdotal experience as I was in their, recorded scientific experience.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. I mean, it's all we're all learning kind of together.
Totally.
Right. I mean,
totally.
It's interesting because like anecdotally, like we already know.
Oh, no doubt about it.
You know what I mean?
And if we wait to progress at the rate that the government allows us to, we're never going to get anything done.
Right.
So much of this science, I think Paul Stamets just put an app out for people that are interested in microdosing called microdose.me. And it's a way for everybody. Yeah, it's for everybody to kind of log their microdose experiences.
Yes.
And they're just basically trying to build this giant net of information for them to base sound science off of.
Right.
And that's why the anecdotal experience in this, and also because we're trying to quantify the ineffable with that experience. So it's already very hard to put into words and on paper. It's so important to get everybody's viewpoint, right? Like we are all the universe experiencing itself. And so every degree of difference that each one of us has doing that offers something valuable to that information download.
Yeah. Man, that statement, that would make sense why so many people have such similar experiences.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, it's a subjective experience with very objective coincidences that happened in it.
Right.
Whether that's, I'm always kind of apprehensive to tell people like, okay, well, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Some people are very dogmatic in their approach to explaining the psychedelic experience, but I've seen such weird, unbelievable things happen in my own experience that and having heard so many other people kind of give me theirs, like, I don't know what's going to happen for you when you take this experience. I can tell you what happened for me, but I'd rather you do it first, and then we'll share stories.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're not.
I don't want to paint a landscape for you. I'd much rather you come back with your experience.
Yeah, and I've done it the other way, and I'm like, oh man, that's not the right way to do it.
Totally.
I totally fucked you up.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, And also, like, I've also had ideas based on prior experiences at certain dosages that I thought I was going to kind of experience this one thing, and then I got turned on my head, and I
Yeah.
had this totally different experience. So, like, I've learned my lesson with that shit.
Yeah, yeah, it's much easier just or better even just let people just
Hmm.
experience it and then
And
we'll
then we'll have a sit down.
then we'll
Yeah,
discuss it.
for sure.
Yeah, dude. I made that real big mistake with like DMT, like telling people, cause like I don't know if it's maybe because like I'm just more um I don't know what the word is, but like susceptible. I don't know if that's the word I want to use. I don't know why I can't think of the word, but either way, like I experienced it. Like it was just very easy for me to like blast off and like
Hmm.
cross over. But like I've been with some people and they did it and they're like I don't feel anything.
Mm.
I'm just like I don't know what I don't understand. Like it's like for me it's just easy to accept it and just
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. That just recently happened to me where someone was like, "Yeah, I don't really get it," and I'm like,
I'm like
and they even said like, okay, so if someone was really trying to party and really trying to see something weird, like, what would you recommend they do? And I'm like, dude, you just did it.
like what are you
What do you,
talking?
what do you mean? So I mean, and there could be a multitude of reasons for that, and I mean, it's also important that people understand going into it if they don't have a bunch of experience with psychedelics and mixing medicines. Like if people are on a ton of SSRIs or have a history with SSRIs, it's very possible that their dopamine receptors and their, are depleted,
Yeah.
and it's not going to work the way that it would for someone with otherwise, kind of healthy neural
Yeah.
network whose dopamine receptors are firing. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
that's all it's working off of.
Now, can't like the psychedelic like help with the restarting of those
Yeah, I think
receptors and
so. I
shit?
think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not good enough with science to be able to say why that would be.
Yeah.
But totally, I think that there needs to probably be a some kind of time in between, where
Yeah.
you're kind of off of those. Like nobody would, like if you were going to travel to an ayahuasca retreat or something like that, they would want to know those things. Also, for anybody listening to this, like, just like with your doctors, be open and honest with your potential medicine, people,
Oh,
your
100%.
curanderos or your shaman, because there are very real consequences for mixing those things,
Yeah.
that you don't want to fuck with. So
That's true, man. Ah, man, I want to fucking go to Peru and do ayahuasca.
yeah.
It would just be a very interesting
Yeah, I
experience.
mean, it's popping up, in more and more places, even closer, a little bit
Oh,
easier to get to. You can
oh
go to
yeah.
Costa Rica, man. I mean, there's
Oh
some
man,
really great
we
places.
can do it here in the
Sure,
states,
you can.
for sure.
I may or may not be attending one in about inside of a month or so.
Oh,
So
that sounds like that might be cool if you did.
it might be. So
Might be pretty
it's
rad.
been. I'm way far removed from that medicine. And, I mean, I've had two experiences with it. They were both really great.
Yeah.
I have I have this weird thing where I envy friends who have hard trips, who have like bad trips.
Yeah. I call them challenging. I just call them
They
challenging
are challenges.
experiences. That's it.
Because me, like I like
It's always good.
yeah, man. I mean, I'm guilty of like just kind of I'm very comfortable in that space. When I
Yeah.
go there, I feel like I'm like in my like the last few times I've done DMT, like I'm like, oh, I'm home, like, which is weird.
It's a good feeling though.
It's a good feeling. It's a
Yeah.
good feeling, and it's kind of like when it's done, you're like, oh man, I wish I could
Oh, I
go
miss
back.
that
Yeah,
place,
I want
man.
to go back.
Dang, man. I know that feeling a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The last few times I've done psychedelics, it left me kind of depressed afterwards.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I'm just gonna chill on those for a second.
For sure. I think
Until,
that's super important.
until I'm a little bit better place.
I did the same thing. I was very irresponsible. I kind of broke all of my. I don't have a ton of discipline in my life, but I do when it comes to medicine.
Yeah.
And I broke kind of all of my rules and all of my disciplines.
What'd
Just
you do?
kind of, and I mean, it was like 3 days of tripping, dude.
Oh.
And to sober up. So so like the okay. So to kind of give you the deal on that, like I was on a pretty healthy dose of penis envy mushrooms, which are the most potent strain, I think, pretty objectively. And I was having a good time, but I was having a hard time with like just the crowd. Like there was a bunch of people around,
Oh yeah.
and it was just kind of a lot for me. But I
Yeah.
had created the space for people to kind of go and chill out if the crowd got to be too much. So I had the foresight to do that,
Yeah.
and I was able to kind of get away from it. And then someone approached me with some DMT. And I did it, and I had just an unbelievably magical DMT experience. It was
Okay.
really awesome, man. It was like one of the coolest, like visually stunning, cool experiences I've ever had.
Let me ask you this: do you keep your eyes open or closed when you do DMT?
I typically go closed.
Me too. I
Typically,
feel like
yeah.
that's the only way to leave this
So like that
plane.
first hit, like everything kind of tunnels in, and then that second hit, I have this like almost a tessellation, like where everything gets real geometric and then starts to fall apart. And then by that third one, then when I actually blast through, then I'm along for the ride. And actually I've had it to where it didn't even matter if my eyes were open or closed. Like I wasn't
You're
there.
just there. Yeah.
So I had this DMT experience, and ultimately it kind of like afterwards it kind of sobered me up. Like to the point where like I wanted to get back to the crowd and I wanted to go sing songs and dance with everybody. And so like I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know, I was able to go and enjoy the company of others and enjoy the party that I was throwing, and it was great. And it was cool. Night ended great. Woke up the next day, and the party just kept on, man. And ended up doing some LSD.
That's an all day event.
And it was an all day. Well, I knew I was in for the whole day anyway.
All day.
So I was like, cool, man, whatever. I got 14 hours to burn, whatever. You know, might as well hit it with a life sentence. So I threw a life sentence on my tongue. And, you know, it was, and then by the way, like a few other people came up to me, oh, you want to try some of my LSD? I'm like, oh, duh, yeah. So like, you know, throughout the day, like I'm just dosing more and more. And all of it was cool, man. Everything was fine. By the time we got back, and we'd spent a day on the river. By the time we got back, you know, I was feeling the effects of just a full day in the sun, but I was still in a great headspace. And then there was like more stuff coming out.
Did you sleep
like,
that night?
Well, kind of. I mean, the night before I did. And then after kind of doing all that, I was tired and I'd been drinking too. Like, but I was tripping so hard that like I never got drunk. You know what I mean? Like I just like it was a chemical shitstorm happening inside of me. You know, it was like all of these things that I would like wag my finger at somebody for doing this shit. You know, and then like you know there's like MDMA coming out and there's like and so like I'm trying a little bit of that and like. I don't have dopamine left in my body at this point. Like I'm just running on chemicals. And I remember everything was kind of getting away from me a little bit, and I was starting to kind of zombify. And there was a lot of people, and I'm walking around, and I'm also kind of hosting a party. So like I'm trying to be a good host. So I'm trying to make sure that everybody's good, even though I'm not good, and I'm not communicating to people who are also like kind of experienced with medicine and stuff. Like I had safety nets. I had the people that could have went and said, hey guys, I need you to hold some space for me a little bit right now. Like I'm kind of fucking hurting. But I didn't do that. I just like kept it all inside, you know.
Too fucking strong,
Too
bro.
fucking strong. Like I'm the leader of this fucking
Masculine.
pack. Fucking ignorant is what it was, you know. And fucking light bulb goes off in my head. I'm like, well, you know, last night when I smoked that DMT, I sobered right up.
And so we're still on day 2.
Yeah.
What time? At what point did the MDMA come?
It's actually kind of day 3, but like the first day, I didn't party too hard. So
okay.
What time did the MDMA come out?
So we're in day 3 now.
Yeah, this is like the last day.
Got it. Okay.
And so the MDMA came out like later. It was actually at a good time. Like we'd all eaten.
Okay.
You know, everybody was kind of ready to start partying. I don't know that. I mean, there was maybe only a couple people that were on my level. You know what I mean? But I'm still like trying to.
You're on a whole.
I'm still kind of trying to hold it together. You know. And so like I had these ideas. I had this brilliant idea that DMT was going to sober me up. And so I go back down to my little space and. I do this DMT, man, and just to rewind a little bit. So, like my first one, I'll kind of give you the gist of what happened. Do you remember? I don't know. Well, you're not that much younger than me, but like Windows 95 used to have this screensaver. It might have been on 98 too, where it was like a maze, and you went through this maze, and when you came to a wall, like the wall would drop, and then you would go through it. And So like I was in like this maze, right, and I had no control over my body, and the walls were like stained glass that were like backlit, and I mean it's super vibrant, bold. Primary colors, not like a really blended spectrum of color. It was pretty cut and dry, like blues, reds, yellows, you know. And I'm floating through this place super fast, and I'm going through this like maze, and like up above, and I don't really do entities in my trip space. Like I don't see a lot of gods or anything like that. Sometimes, but not really. but there was like this weird fucking jester character, which is crazy, man. Like when I follow these different psychedelic artists on Instagram and stuff, like sometimes they'll paint some shit that I'm like, motherfucker, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that thing. I know that. So that's when it gets weird for me. You
Yeah.
know? So, and up above it was almost like he was like a puppet master. Like I was just like a marionette that he was just dragging through this labyrinth. Like you know, like the labyrinth game where it's like a wooden box and you're trying to get like the silver ball to get through it without falling through the hole.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like. And I'm like the silver ball and he's just pulling me through. It was crazy. It was cool. Kind of like this weird carnival music kind of going on. Strange shit. So that was the first night. It was fine. I came out. I was like, well, okay, that was strange. It was cool. It was strange. You know. Well, the second night when I go to sober up, I hit it. I hit it again. Hit it the third time. Pew, blast off. I end up in the same spot, except this time the fucking lights aren't on and nobody's home. So like it was like the same place, but all the colors were super muted, almost like almost grayscaled, you know. But there was still a little bit of color in there. And I'm going in it, and like the carnival music is way off key. There is no entity there, and I'm just wandering aimlessly through this labyrinth. Which fine, I know I'm gonna be fine. It's great. But then, dude, I fell out. Like I fell out of this space, and I was floating in this void, man. And it was I was literally just floating in the black, and it was the most. It wasn't like floating in despair, and it wasn't like floating in hate, and it wasn't like floating in love. It was like floating in pure fucking indifference, man. Like my existence didn't matter. Nothing that I've ever thought has ever mattered. Nothing I've ever done's ever mattered. The family that I make doesn't matter. Nothing matters. This is what it is now. And buddy, I was floating around in this for so long that when I came out of it, god damn, I've never been so happy to see my friends in my life. And they're like, you know, they're kind of expecting me to tell them about my journey. And I'm like, how long was I out? You know, and they're like, 6-7 minutes, dude, no big deal. And I'm like, fuck, man, if it was one eternity, it was fucking 10. Like I was out for 2 eternities in that time. And it was, I mean, at that point I was done, man. And like I walked out and it felt like I'd fallen asleep, like inside of the dream, inside of the trip. And, I'm kind of walking back up towards the crowd, and my buddy walks up to me, and he's like, "You good?" And he's kind of an experienced traveler, and I kind of tell him what happened. He goes, "Oh fuck, you fell at the bottom of it, huh?" And I'm like, "God, dude, yes." He goes, "Oh, that is the worst." And I'm like, "Thanks for the encouragement." Yes, it is. You know, like, yes, it's the fucking worst.
Yeah.
And so anyway, like, and then like Steve comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you doing?" He's having the time of his life. He's Steve. He's jumping around. He's bouncing around. He's doing okay. And I'm like, I'm a hollow man. And like the look on Steve's face, like I'd never seen somebody so terrified, man. Like, and he was like, he was convinced that I broke myself, and in that moment I did.
Yeah.
And dude, you know, I went up and I saw my fiance, and I'm kind of telling her, you know, okay, babe, like I'm still trying to just be the leader. You know, and people are still coming up. They're still, and man, everybody that's talking to me, it's just wah, wah, wah. It's just fucking nothing.
Yeah.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
I'm out, you know, but I'm at the same time smiling, nodding, all right, man, giving people hugs, like, and and I kept telling, you know, Miss, I'm like, all right, babe, I'm gonna go to bed. And she's like, okay, well, you've told me that 7 times in like the last 15 minutes, you know. I'm like, okay, cool. There was also this thing where I didn't want the party to end. Like I was, you know, I just surrounded by people that I love, and we were all having this amazing weekend. And everybody's story that they're sharing with me, they're just talking about how great this whole weekend was and how thankful they were. And in that, I couldn't enjoy, you know, something that I had created that had made so many people so happy. I just felt just empty.
Yeah.
And fucking, you know, just I was sad. So I woke up the next day, and like cleaning was a chore. It was really hard to kind of break everything down. Watching people leave, like I was weeping. You know, I had to walk away from. I was weeping, crying. Like every time someone left, it felt like just a piece of me was being ripped away. And I was like, you know, I was just so fucking irresponsible. I was so mad at myself. And luckily, I have enough experience, kind of reading on this stuff, like enough knowledge of this that I knew what was physically happening. You know, and luckily also there were a couple kids who were like festy kids, you know, and like this one dude just kind of saw me wandering around camp because I was trying to clean shit up, but like instead of like, getting a basket and loading a bunch of shit in the basket and go. I would like walk over, grab a candle, and then walk like 800 feet and set the candle down, and then walk back and grab like another candle. Like,
Yeah.
I was lost.
Yeah, you couldn't get your thoughts together at all.
Oh, dude, I was just
Scattered.
zapped,
Yeah,
you
I've
know.
been there.
And luckily, like this guy who grew up on the festival circuit was like, hey man, he came over to me. He could see. He's like, you need to eat this, and I'm like, I'm good. He's like, no. Your brain needs food. You need food. Like, you need this. And then a friend came and gave me some 5-HTP and like gave me some, just things that I knew that I needed to take. So luckily I had that, but I did have a really hard like next 24 hours of just like, what the fuck. But I guess if that's what it took, like even my fiance said, man, since that experience, your personal growth has been tremendous. So like there's this weird thing, right, where like, fuck, I know. Like, this is why I envy my friends who have the challenging journeys, because there's always so much growth.
That was a challenging journey, bro.
It was a challenging journey, and it pisses me off what I had to do to get to it, right? Like, and that's such a fucking ego trip, dude. I get it, and so like I don't. I don't tempt those fates. Like, I'm not like, I don't beat my chest, be like, is that all you got? Because, I mean, I've been broken by it, and it's a scary motherfucker, man. It's scary.
Yeah.
So, like, there are certain substances. A while ago, I decided that I wasn't going to take these things recreationally. I think that there are certain substances that, can be an exception to that. But there are certain medicines that I absolutely don't and haven't for a long time. Psilocybin's one of them. Like, I don't take mushrooms for fun. I haven't taken mushrooms for fun outside of that little camping trip where I took a few.
Yeah.
The idea wasn't to really do it for fun. I was actually going to go kind of sit down and meditate for a little while and kind of get my shit right.
Yeah.
Setting wasn't great. But like, you wouldn't like just drink ayahuasca and go to the club.
No,
you know what I mean?
Like,
it'd be awful,
Yeah.
And psilocybin for me, I have that same relationship with mushrooms that I do.
Yeah.
That many people do with ayahuasca. And I actually hope, as they become, because psilocybin's a much more sustainable medicine.
Yeah.
That I hope that we'll see more and more people building ceremonies around psilocybin. I had the idea to build a ceremony, my own personal ceremony for me and kind of a close group of friends around psilocybin about 6 years ago. And ever since doing that, I'm like, oh shit, like it's just as powerful as ayahuasca is. It's just
Dude,
as powerful.
psilocybin gave me my most difficult journey. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It was very challenging. It was because, I think we talked about it the one time.
Yeah.
I just made bad choices.
That's the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time, if you don't respect this shit, like,
powerful,
you're
man.
You're gonna get reminded real quick how small you are.
Yeah.
And so, but like I said, and I mean, I experienced a lot of personal growth. I always feel like the most challenging ones, like, so after a good trip, like it's great and it's always fun, kind of trying to define it, But after a challenging one, like for me anyway, my personal experience, like when I wake up that next morning and I look at the sky, it's just that much bluer. The air is that much crisper, and I've got shit I gotta do. Like that's like, okay, well these are the things you got to fix about yourself, about your broken ass self, and sometimes you get to have a good one, but man, like there's nothing quite as humbling and as motivating as a challenging experience.
Yeah, I think the last few times I've done psychedelics, I just get this overwhelming feeling, like you said, like I keep telling myself like none of this fucking matters. I'm like, dude, none of this matters, and I try to like use that in a positive in a positive way, in the sense of, dude, none of it matters. You can do whatever the fuck you want to do. You can totally go do it. But then sometimes I just be like, man, but what the fuck for?
Yeah, man, I had an interesting. I tried ketamine for the first time this year.
How was that?
It was the most beautifully unique psychedelic dissociated experience I've ever had. And I had a very similar thought where I was like, oh, fuck. Like, none of this shit matters.
Yeah,
like none of this shit matters. Very nihilistic.
Economics, right? What the fuck? We're all just playing a game.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so, but like, if that's the message, you get to kind of process that. You get to choose how you process that. You can either be like, well, fuck it, I'm not playing this game.
Yeah.
But you still live within the game. So, I mean,
you have no choice.
You want to play the game or do you want to just lose the game? That's really those are your two choices.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are able to kind of remove themselves of it, but at that point, you've won the game. In other words, like you've found a way to be self-sustaining, to find a way to be you, get paid for it, and be able to eat on it.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Fucking right. That's
Fuck
what I
yeah,
hope.
dude.
That's what everybody's trying to do.
Yeah.
I grew up a kid like everyone's like, hey, get a job, get a good job, make sure it has insurance, make sure it pays well. But like how many, luckily I grew up in a family of business owners and things like that. So like there was another voice that was like, oh man, you make your way. Like don't
Yeah.
fuck that. Like
Yeah,
it
dude.
ain't about degrees and it ain't about, how employable you are. It's about what kind of value you create for other people.
100%.
You know.
That's really what it's about.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
dude.
sure. So like in this ketamine experience, like I had that thing where I was like, oh, none of this matters. But then at the same time, I was doing it with somebody that was, idol's a weird word. I don't want to say idol, but like somebody I really admire and with an international presence. And like I found myself all of a sudden, like I had put myself in a position to be able to go and do this. And then I was there and I was doing it with that person. And so that was kind of fucking with me. Like now all of a sudden, like my reality was kind of folding in on itself. I'm like, wait a minute. Is this person actually here? Am I actually doing this with them? And also kind of knowing that person's history, and knowing that they had a kind of a break with reality and shit like that. Because I've listened to hundreds of hours of their podcasts. And, like I feel like I know them way better than they know me. And like as I'm questioning these things out loud and he's like, I assure you, it's all real. And I'm like, fuck, it's all real. Okay. Okay, well, if that's the case, if it's all real, okay, well, then that means that there's nothing that separates me from the people that I admire.
Nothing.
I'm not trying to sit down and have conversations with Albert Pujols. I'm not trying to play baseball with Albert Pujols. There's a physical barrier that keeps me from contributing to what he does for a living that I just will never cross.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But in this intellectual arena, where I've sat with people who are leading voices around the globe for this kind of research, I've seen those people equally as interested in my methods of getting there and what I've taken out of it as I was in them. And so, like that immediately followed me saying, oh, fuck, I know this is real too. Oh, it's all real. Oh, shit, if it's all real, then what's keeping me from talking to the people that I want to do?
Dude,
and then
nothing,
inside
bro.
of a month, I was, talking to Shane, hanging with Shane.
Rick
Then I got
Doblin.
Rick Doblin.
Yeah.
Rick was my holy grail, dude. Like when we started doing this, like I'm like, well, fuck, if there's anybody I could just sit down with and ask any question, I think it'd be this guy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's some other guys that are kind of on the tier, but not really. Like, I mean, that was like my
He was
dude.
your number one.
I'd like to have a few more. And so looking at Steve afterward, I'm like, fuck, okay, well, time to get the board out and put some new names on it.
Yeah, well, that's my vision board right there. I had to put a whole bunch of new names on there. I just
Right
set
on.
that with Andy Frisella, dude. Like, that was my
It's
number
awesome,
one
dude.
name
I
on
know.
there.
It was cool too because I think they happened within
Like a week or two
yeah
of each
within
other.
a week or two of each other. I'm like, fuck yeah, we're doing things.
It's the
dude.
universe, bro.
And it's awesome.
And the thing is, when you do that, you quickly realize they're just people just like you, and we're all in the same. Like, there's nothing that really separates you other than just, like, maybe exposure and time.
Totally.
Like, that's it.
Totally. And all of us are kind of running the same, not maybe the same race, but we're running a similar race, and some of us are just a little further ahead.
That's it.
And sometimes, like, it's you can catch a draft, man. It's like NASCAR. You can catch a draft behind that car, and then all of a sudden it doesn't take quite as much gas to go at the same rate as them. Mm-hmm. They'll pull you along with them. And that was like, first off, I can't speak highly enough of Rick Doblin, like, because I feel like he is. First off, he was doing the work before it was in vogue. Like, he was doing this in the early '80s. He went because he saw a potential problem. Like, MDMA was already being developed to combat depression, but it was also starting to catch on in Europe it was known as Adam. It was a super popular club drug, and just following the same the path that all other drugs, and how the government has treated them. Like, well, if kids are having fun on this, then we're going to have to do something about it. So he was like very forward thinking in that and knew that this shit was going to come up. So he basically went and he sat in the courtrooms, sat in on these meetings with the DEA and with the different scheduling agencies. And he was like, basically a proponent for it. Like, okay, hey, I hear what you're saying, but like, these have tremendous value. And he fought for it all along, and he was trying to get, the FDA and the DEA to approve, these studies, because he knew how viable it could be for treating depression, and he got rejected like 5 or 6 times. Man,
Oh
it took a
yeah.
whole decade of being rejected, and then kind of slowly they were like, okay. And I mean, this has been a 30-year process, and now they're in stage 3.
Yeah.
You know,
We're getting close.
we're getting real close. And I mean, out of his mouth, like, by the end of 2021, maybe 2022, we should have clinics
Clinics.
pretty well all over the country. And their
Yeah.
big vision is like maybe 10 years out is that those clinics don't just offer MDMA. They offer a whole,
Whole
a whole
gamut.
spectrum
Yeah.
of,
Spectrum.
of, of different psychedelic medicines. Because, what works for me, what medicine, the efficacy of each medicine is dependent on different people. Some of my best friends, like, ayahuasca is their end all be all. They get all of the answers on that. I mean, I feel like I've gotten much more profound work out of very high doses of psilocybin than I have ayahuasca. And that's not to take away from that. It's just the way that psilocybin acts
With
with
you.
my body versus the way DMT acts with my
Yeah, we're
body.
all individuals.
Totally. And there's also something to be said for there's a million different ways to brew ayahuasca. There's different MAOIs to put in there. There's different harmalines, different things that affect our body differently and change the experience differently. So hopefully we'll get to a point where you can go in and maybe it's ketamine, maybe it's MDMA, maybe it's psilocybin, maybe
Yeah.
it's it might be. They are actually doing ayahuasca trials. It'd probably be
Really?
yeah, they are over in Europe. So that's really interesting. That's
Yeah.
cool. And they're also doing some DMT studies, but I don't think the DMT is so much being used for like depression studies as it is. They're just trying to figure out what this fucking weird chemical is doing.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Like it's
I
great.
dig
It's
that
got to be
too.
done. Like the guys from Michigan, a couple of the graduate students, so they were trying to map where DMT was coming from. And a lot of people think it comes from the pineal gland. And so
Is that true
they're
though?
doing it in rats. And actually, what was pretty cool, man, is I was sitting with these guys, and it was really cool to be able to get in the weeds on their research because
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I understood them correctly, but they actually removed the pineal gland out of some of the test rats.
Yeah.
And in the rats that had it removed, not only was there a significant amount of DMT still in the blood, but there was significantly more DMT in the blood when the pineal gland was removed. So what they could say definitively was that it doesn't depend on the human body doesn't depend on the pineal gland
For some reason, I think it's the liver, dude.
There's all
I
kinds
feel
of
like maybe I
different
heard
places.
that.
Possible.
I could be
Totally
making that
possible.
up though. I'm
I mean,
probably making that up.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure. I think it's present probably everywhere in your body.
Probably.
Now where it's being produced, I don't know.
Who fucking knows? That's interesting though.
For sure. So it was
Yeah.
kind of neat to hear that, to hear these
Oh,
guys
yeah.
like that's these dudes are fully funded doctorate students, like that's their deal. And what the guy was saying was that the most basic science experiment that you could ever do for DMT like hasn't been done. So there's so much breakthrough science,
Yeah.
to be done and recorded and published.
Yeah.
Like you could take a cell, put it in a petri dish, drop DMT on it, and just see how the cell reacts. That study hasn't been done.
Yeah.
The idea for them is that there is, it's a huge frontier, that they still get to go and
Yeah.
pioneer.
It's exciting times, man. You're seeing a lot of cities, legalize psilocybin and different things. So
No doubt.
it's pretty cool. Man, Rick Doblin is definitely one of those people I wanted to sit down with from the get-go. So I for sure will try to sit down
You
with
can
him.
do it, man.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, that was the other thing.
Everyone's in California, dude. You just got to take a trip and go out there for a week or two.
If you just put yourself in a position to be where these guys are.
Yeah. Conferences and different things.
Conferences, whatever, whatever
Yeah.
they might be. I put Rick on a pedestal that only exists in my brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've admired him from afar as just like this kid who, fucking ate mushrooms 20 years ago and then slowly came into whoa, what is this MAPS thing? And then Amazon came out with Smile, and they were I'm like, well, I just want whatever I can donate extra that I'm not really thinking about. So MAPS has been my Amazon Smile donation for 5 years since Smile came out, and only because I truly believe in this organization that has raised $75 million, I think, is how much MAPS has raised
Oh,
over
wow.
time. 75 million, dude.
He lets you know where every penny's going.
Oh yeah, you can go and track it all down, and there's also dude, I've already been using Dr. Bronner soaps for a long time, but now I'm super happy to use Dr. Bronner soaps, and that's the other thing that psychedelics do and cannabis does, and that is it marries people who may differ in political thought may differ in a bunch of different, kind of societal, what they feel like should be societal norms. But anybody who's actually been wowed by the experience, like they understand the importance of this. Like me and David Bronner probably don't agree on much as far as how we should move forward politically, but I guarantee you we agree on how important this is. I mean, he's putting his money, he's got the money to put there, but he's donating $250,000 pretty regularly to these different movements, whether that's decriminalize nature out in Oakland, whether that's the Denver for psilocybin initiative that passed pretty favorably. There's big shit going on in Oregon right now. I mean, there's a very viable psilocybin market that's about to pop off.
I think Chicago also, right?
I think they did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chicago just did a bunch of basically natural psychedelics.
Yeah.
So if it grows in the ground, you can't be. What they did was they essentially, the same way with Denver, they stripped all of the funding from the prosecutor and from the law enforcement agencies to prosecute or jail people for these offenses.
Quit wasting time and resources.
Stop
dude.
it with that shit.
Yeah, dude, it's fucking crazy.
We already have laws that punish crimes.
Yeah.
Right? And so you can do it like you do it with alcohol. You can treble the punishment. You know what I mean? Like if something is done under the influence of these things, okay, fine. Great.
Yeah.
Punish the crime times 3. Who gives a shit? But don't actually punish the possession and the use of it. That's nonsense.
Well, the idea that you can outlaw nature and
you
can police people's consciousness.
It's crazy. Who gave you the reins?
Dude, you can't even keep drugs out of prison.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
We're always going to find a way to alter our consciousness
For sure.
one form or another.
You should talk to Seth Ferrani. He's a local dude, but he was a convicted LSD kingpin. Spent 23 years in jail. He's a Vice author, and he's written tons of books. He's a local dude. I'll get you set up with him. But hear his story, dude. And I mean, he did hard time in hard prisons, all because he sold acid and weed. It's fucking nuts, man.
Dude, yeah.
It's fucking nuts.
It's cool to see where we're going, though. MDMA is one of the, I haven't tried that yet, and it's super high on my list. It's like one of those things, like, and this is for the listeners, too. Like, we're not saying go do psychedelics, but
no, actually, if anything, I mean, no, seek out the experience if it calls to you, but just don't.
Yeah. Well, and sourcing is of the utmost importance, right?
Totally.
So that's always kind of one of the things with me. Like, I'm just like, hey, man, I'll be patient until I find the right source.
Dancesafe.org, man. Like, that's for anybody listening. Like, it's the organization's awesome. Actually, and they were at the Drug Policy Alliance where we talked to Doblin.
Yeah. How was that?
It was really cool, man. I actually wish I made a little bit more time with it. It was kind of tough with my 9 to 5, but it had some really great speakers, really cool people there. It was just neat to see. Once again, a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life with a lot of different challenges in their lives kind of coming together and all agreeing that the draconian drug laws that we have, the war on drugs, the amount of money that we spend on this shit,
my goodness.
and the idea that it's doing any good. It's not. I mean, we were in the middle of an opioid crisis, and never in the history of time have we ever spent more money trying to enforce drug use.
Yeah, lobbyists, dude.
And so, it's. I mean, I posted something on our page today. There's some cool movements going on, but if we actually care about the family members that we've lost to overdose, if we actually care about the people that we fear losing to overdose, then we have to change the way that we think about drug use in general.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to stop it with guns or jail. It's not going to happen. No. Drug dealers don't create the market. Willing users create markets. And so the sooner we start teaching people about safe drug use, and have kind of some avenues for people to be able to do that. And I'm pretty extreme on like what I think should be legal and what I think shouldn't be legal. And I mean, I'm very libertarian in that regard. Like, I think what someone does with their own consciousness, with their own body, is kind of their own business. It's like making suicide illegal, right? You know what I mean? Like, not to equate drug use to suicide, because that's definitely not the message I'm trying to put across. But it's the idea that, like,
what you do with your own body.
What I do with my body, I'm a sovereign being. I have complete agency over myself, and I get to make this choice.
Yeah.
So
it's a healthcare issue too, right?
It is.
It's not a penal issue. Like,
not
why are we?
No doubt.
Making.
I mean, Portugal made it that way a long time ago,
case.
and actually, drug use is.
Gone down.
If it's gone, even if it hasn't grown.
Hasn't grown.
If anything, it's stagnated or gone down. But what has drastically dropped are the number of deaths.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we're a compassionate society, I mean, isn't that really the goal here?
Yeah, and the whole idea that you always like when you start throwing like the kids in the mix, like you're worried what's going to happen to the kids. Like when you start destigmatizing these
Totally.
things, the kids don't want to run to it. You know what
I
I
mean,
mean?
I think you'd be hard pressed right now. Like, I think that as you look at this latest kind of young adult generation, I think you're going to see a lot less drinking,
Oh
a
yeah,
lot less even cannabis use. I don't think it's like very I know as a kid, and I was never like, oh, you can't tell me what to do. Like, I'm just going to do what I want to do. There's part of that, but I feel like, yeah, as you destigmatize, you kind of take the shine off of it a little bit. Like,
yeah.
man, even me, like, even as cannabis is becoming, and I think that cannabis is a unbelievably important medicine for a wide array of uses. But like as I've become more and more involved in the movement at the different conferences and things like that, like I'd be lying if I didn't say that the shine's kind of come off it a little bit. It ain't the same thing that it was when I was a younger kid.
Oh,
Like
not at
now
all.
it's a business. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
Psychedelics still have a little bit of that flair because there's still a taboo to it.
No, yeah.
But I'm happy to sit with you and have the conversation. We were talking about that. Like I have kids.
Yeah.
Like is it the smartest idea in the world that I talk about this stuff all the time? Maybe not. But like I'm hoping that we're progressing to a point that people can look at me, realize that I'm trying to be responsible about this, realize that I'm trying to have very adult conversations with scientists, with people that actually know what the fuck they're talking about,
Oh
instead of
yeah.
the people who are just trying to make it this big scary thing that's going to kill you or whatever.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if I carry myself in a way, I can become a steward of information. That I mean, here's the deal: what you know, what is more convincing to a group of 50, 60, 70-year-old grandmothers and grandfathers who have who have a grandson who is addicted to heroin, and they're afraid that they're not sure when his last shot's going to be, you know. And then when you show them something like Ibogaine works at like an 80 to 90% clip
Yeah.
of removing
That's
people
a challenging
from
fucking
opiates. Fuck
experience.
yeah. But so what, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's better than dying from fucking
we brought
overdose.
from shock to awe to St. Louis last January, and our goal was to fill the theater with first responders, veterans, just victims of PTSD. We've all experienced trauma, almost. I mean, everybody. And Dr. Gabor Mate, he talks about how people say cannabis is a gateway drug, alcohol is a gateway drug. Bullshit. Trauma is a gateway drug,
Trauma. Yeah.
and we've all experienced
I
trauma.
like to sit
And
down with him too.
oh fuck yeah,
Yeah.
fuck yeah. And I'm sure he's happy to share.
Yeah.
Like sure, that's the whole thing. I put these people on a pedestal. 30 years ago, Rick Doblin was probably just looking for anybody to
To talk
listen to
to.
what he was saying.
Yeah.
And now like to be able, like, the fruits of his labor, that there are so many up and coming, just like inspired people that want to have this conversation with him and pick his brain about this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not putting him out.
Right.
Like if anything, it's something that he gets to celebrate.
It's just a matter of whether or not they have the time, right? You
Totally.
just connect with them. But yeah, dude, trauma, like, yeah, dude, that's an
It's a
underlying
real
cause of
it's a it's an underlying cause of all of these different, like, everybody's story that has any kind of addiction. It's related to an escape from some kind of trauma.
whatever it is.
And they
Yeah.
may not even know that. Like, they may not have even grown up in an environment where
Yeah.
mental health was a conversation that was readily happening.
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
a
I
lot of
mean,
people
a lot of
know
people
that.
still don't.
A lot of people think it's a weakness, to
Yeah.
go see a therapist or, to talk about these kind of things. So I think that there's like this really cool thing that's happening where we're all turning on a little bit, where men aren't afraid to show emotion. Where
Yeah.
we have like real warriors who are kind of releasing that stigma too. Guys like Aubrey Marcus and Joe Rogan, like they're interviewing some of the baddest dudes on the planet that could pound for pound just rip your limbs from your body, but at the same time, like, those dudes will sit there and have a real conversation, talk about the shit that scared them in their life, the things that have traumatized them, the things that keep them driving, and maybe you see these guys tear up and cry through it. Like this, it's a whole new generation
Oh
that's coming
yeah.
up, man, and it's pretty fucking powerful. And then
Yeah.
as soon as these guys start to realize how much chicks dig that shit too, like, they're just gonna dial into that even more, man.
Fucking
So
game changer.
for
Yeah,
real,
we're living in new times, dude.
it's new times, brother, and it's exciting times, and it's important work, and to kind of just go back to that, when we brought that movie, from shock to awe. Buddy of ours, Matt Cale, he's been on the show a few times. We actually had a chance to hang out with him in Kansas City at the Cannabis Showcase last week. These dudes did some shit, in Iraq. They saw some shit in Iraq and Afghanistan that they cover in the movie. And if anybody hasn't seen it, please take the opportunity. I think you can get on Amazon Prime. Or there's plenty of streaming platforms from shock to awe. But it documents these veterans going through ayahuasca ceremonies. The wives of veterans, the wives of people with PTSD, or the spouses of people with PTSD, they're experiencing extreme PTSD as well.
Oh yeah, they're living in a different way.
One of the spouses does assisted MDMA, therapy, and has like this profound thing. So like that's what this documentary kind of covers. These guys did some real work in there, and at the end of this movie, to see like there was a bunch of firemen, bunch of police officers, bunch of veterans, kind of dabbing tears out of their eyes because it's a very fucking hard thing to watch. But at the end, Steve and I had like, probably 5 ladies that were ranging from 50 to 70 years old. And like they were actively asking us about Ibogaine. Like, what do you know about Ibogaine? Well, Ibogaine it wasn't even a subject on the movie. Like, so like these gals are already doing
some research.
Because the kids that they love, their family, they're victim to this, this epidemic, this opioid epidemic, and people can fucking roll their eyes at that as much as they want, about how drug use is a choice and it's not a disease. They're fucking wrong, by the way.
Once that shit gets its chemical hooks
once
in your
it
brain,
gets its hook
bro.
in you, you're fucking hooked.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, our doctors, our medical care professionals, that everybody who doesn't believe in any of the Eastern, maybe mystical side of things, that just need hard science. Well, guess what? Hard science got us fucking dosing people up with mad opioids and SSRIs and benzodiazepines and all of these different things to counteract the side effects of all of these different things. Like, the answer lies somewhere in the middle.
I have a hard time even listening to doctors these days. Like, I mean, they know what they know, but they're educated in a pharmaceutical model. It's very reactionary. It's essentially sick care, not health care.
Yeah.
I had a doctor one time. I was telling him I wanted to get like a full lipid panel and just get blood work just to see where my markers are, so I know where I'm at. And he was basically like trying to advise against getting certain blood work tests done just because he's like, well, if you're not having these symptoms, then I probably wouldn't recommend he's basically like working reactionary. He's like, if you're having issues, then we would check that. But it's like, it's just the model that these guys work in. It's not really healthcare.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, the first time I went from an MD to a DO, like I didn't even realize, a doctor of osteopathy, like, They treat medicine totally different. Like, if you're having this symptom, like, A, what's your diet like? B, what's your stress levels like? Like they just kind of approached it. So like for me, that was super refreshing. Like it was a guy that still went to the same amount of school as any MD did. He can still prescribe medicine. He just kind of like was trying to look at it from a much more holistic approach.
Yeah.
Like your body is an entire organism.
That's how it should be.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And not to
there
mention,
are a lot of good doctors out there.
There are a ton.
Too.
Yeah.
Not to find them.
That's the whole deal. Is the answer is somewhere in the middle. If you're all the way in on the the mystic side of things, you're probably gonna die. And if you're all the way in on the Western, pharmaceutical side of things, actually, if you're in on all of the, you're always going to die. But it depends on it depends on kind of what your approach is. There might be an answer on this side that is not going to come from that side, and vice versa.
Yeah.
How many people, Colton Turner, we've had him on our show a couple times. He was Cannabis Person of the Year 2 years ago. This kid, they told him just make yourself comfortable. They were totally okay with resigning the fact that, hey, this kid's just going to die from Crohn's. We got no way to fix it.
Yeah.
And then, his mom happened to find some study where maybe cannabis was having some effects. And next thing you know, within, months, it was a complete reversal of his Crohn's. Complete reversal. It's a super compelling story.
Yeah.
Another kid you should talk to, man. It's a great little sit down. And he's a polished kid, too, because he's told us, like, he's had to sit in front of Senate chambers and things like that.
Tell his story.
Because they'd said, hey, he actually looked the senator in the eye and said, if I follow, he said, if he goes, without cannabis, this senator basically said, well, if it's not legal, then I'm not okay with you taking it. That was what the senator, and he said, without cannabis, I'll die. And he goes, well, I'm sorry. Like that was what, and then as this dude just turns his back and walks away. Now, as a parent, like if I'm standing there, if someone fucking told my kid that, like, Dude, I'd
Well,
beat the brakes.
how can you tell any
Any
human
human.
being? Yeah.
But I'm talking like a 15-year-old kid, 14-year-old
Yeah.
kid. Like, I'll beat the brakes off of your ass.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'm a physically violent guy, but seriously, fuck you. Where's your heart?
Yeah.
You know. So, man, like, had he not sought that out, he was just they were just okay with just saying, hey,
It's fucking crazy.
you're gonna
dude.
die. And that shit hits home with me, because had I been a little better educated when my dad got sick, I wouldn't. I knew that cannabis could help. I knew that it could help in some degrees, and it did. Helped him with his appetite, helped him with his pain relief, helped him with his anxiety and sleep.
Yeah.
But in reality, because of where his cancer was, he probably should have been eating cannabis. And I just didn't know enough about RSO or fecal oil in order to kind of get him on a regimen like that, because I would have given everything just to be able to, like, if I have a regret, it's just that I didn't know enough about it. And, like, nobody that I become friends with will ever be short of that information. I just had a phone call with my mom the other day, which that's when you know shit's fucking awesome, because my mom's like, you know, so-and-so's husband got some really bad news, and I just feel like, you know, we need to get him some. Now, my mom has, like, never fucking used cannabis. You know, like, she was cool with that, with dad using it, you know. It definitely opened her eyes to it a little bit, because his nausea medicine was like $2,600 a month. It didn't fucking help at all.
No.
You know what I mean? They couldn't afford it, and I'm like, I got your nausea medicine.
Right.
You know? And so, like, she saw, like, in real time, you know, all it takes is for that shit to land on your doorstep, and then all of a sudden, you know, it means something.
Starts working.
It's a different game.
Yeah.
So she called me on Thanksgiving, or I called her on Thanksgiving morning, tell her Happy Thanksgiving, whatever. We're having a conversation. And then it segued into this, you know, this talk about, hey, what can we do?
Yeah.
Is there something we could give them? I started educating her on fecal oil as I'm driving through the country roads, whatever. And, like, you know, it's a glimmer of hope. And if you want to change people's minds who have been given bad information for fucking 5 decades,
Right.
you can't be mad at people for you know, believing everything they've been told.
Yeah, it's
for
a challenge.
their whole life.
Yeah.
It is challenging.
There's a lot of misinformation out there.
But there's a way, you know, to convince them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes it has to hit home. It has to land on their doorstep.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily. I mean, as we show more and more people, and as I think as world leaders kind of wake up to it a little bit, and, you know, I'm still hopeful, man. I think by, you know, the next election, I think that we'll have some movement at the federal level on
I think eventually the narrative will change. Like, it can't persist forever. It's already changing, right?
Yep.
So that's really good. And then as, you know, new generations come and old generations go, it's just going to eventually kind of fade itself out that way. But there's so much information out there, dude.
No doubt.
It's hard to keep up with it all.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the cool things is that we get to kind of, you know, people cuss social media. They celebrate social media. We get to kind of make our social media feed look like we want it to. You know?
Yeah. It's like a good and a bad thing.
It's a good and a bad thing. Like, right? I talked to you about how I'm afraid of existing in an echo chamber where everybody agrees with me. So,
Right.
like, I still keep the things that, like, are challenging or you know, or you know, challenge my beliefs a little bit. But for the most part, man, like 80% of my feed are things that make me happy and things that inspire me and you know, and
add value.
like, man, I watched Thanksgiving. Like, I haven't watched fucking you know, broadcast TV, and I couldn't tell you how long.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And so, like, you know, whatever, we're at the family's house, we're at the in-laws, you know, my brother-in-law's got the football game on, it's great, and every other commercial was pharmaceutical.
Yeah, dude. It's
It's
crazy.
weird. It's weird. Like, it's like every
this is
dystopian.
legal. I'm looking around like, this is fucking legal. Like, this is happening right now.
Every dystopian future movie that you've ever seen, where, like, where that shit, like it's happening in front of us, and like, if you don't get out of the matrix for just a minute to be able to kind of see that, like,
Dude,
it's just normal to them.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like, if nobody's had that break, like, it's just normal to them. I cut my cords 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and now, like, everything's, you know, like, now they've made it to where you've got an a la carte, everything can be streaming, but now they're finding ways to get ads back in there.
They're finding ways,
you know,
for sure.
And so it's like, all right, well,
Dude, the older we get, the more relevant that movie is.
totally.
Dude, I just understand it so much more.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This is the Matrix.
Black Mirror hits that shit too. Like,
dude.
like, that's my jam. You know, that's my favorite show on Netflix.
Like,
and, like, they've got some really poignant, like, they imagine all of the things that they imagine to their worst case scenario. I'm like, all of these are kind of happening
like in some way, shape, or form in society right now.
Yeah, dude, that one episode of Black Mirror where they do you have to rate everybody all the time, like you're
That's
constant.
the one that got me hooked.
I'm
It's the
just like,
first episode of season 3. And that
dude.
shit's happening in China.
Oh, dude,
Social currency.
it's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Dude, if that was real though, I'd be fucking banking. I'd be banking. Everybody loves me.
Well, that's the deal, right? Like that's the idea. And it is a real thing. Like as guys that are podcasters or trying to put content out there, like
yeah.
people that are our fans have no idea how valuable their like and review is.
Oh man.
They have no idea.
If people who are listening would just fucking go and leave a rating and
Leave
review.
a review on the Outside Perspective podcast.
Guys,
Let 'em know.
just do it. Go to Apple Podcasts
2
because
seconds.
that's the only one that matters really.
Right.
Or you can go to YouTube and subscribe.
Sure, yeah, do that too. It's really so. Somebody I think Andrew Yang was talking about it, but the idea that Facebook is not paying each individual user for all of the data that they're mining eventually, like if there could be some recompense for that, there would people would be more apt to use the there's a kind of a model there for a universal basic income, just because of how much you're sharing and because that's all they're doing. They're just farming data. There's a
data is so
Netflix
much
documentary
money.
right now. Steve turned me on to it. It's fucking terrifying, but it covers all of Cambridge Analytica and how they basically have swayed elections. And I can't remember what it is right now, but
Yeah.
it basically shows the value of our data. The data industry is bigger than oil.
Dude,
It's more valuable than oil.
huge. Every Fortune 500 company has
Yeah.
a big data department.
Yep.
They're all aggregating data. They're all
Yeah.
sharing data. They're all selling data. Like There's more data available than anybody could ever really actually like sift through and
No doubt.
comprehend. And
But they can also like pinpoint it, like
Yeah.
down to whatever.
you can figure out trends and different things. Yeah,
Totally.
it's fucking crazy, dude.
Well, and that's where I think the blockchain is it's a game changer, and I don't know if my generation's gonna get it. I think my kids' generation will. The decentralized internet platforms like Steemit have been paying people for likes in their own cryptocurrency for a very long time. I would love. It's my goal, right? Like we got the fucking dream board. My dream board is to move all of these people off of Facebook's platform
Yeah.
into a decentralized platform where we have a community
Yeah.
where people can be. A lot of people don't understand how cryptocurrency works, and that's fine. But what I can hopefully get across to them is like every time you like something, every time you share something, it's actually worth something. Like it's worth something in this world.
Yeah.
And so if I can convince people, especially and like just start with our little community of 100 people. Hey, come over here with us. You're going to check in with this, and Facebook got their claws in the right way, right? Like they built this totally free platform where people could connect with family and friends from all over. Man, I lived in Springfield, Missouri for half my life. It was a perfect way for me to stay in touch with all of my family in St. Louis, all of my childhood friends, all of that. And now, as we've all grown, and now we're even in further, more remote corners of the globe, they've just made it so easy for me to check in and see where all of these people are. So, like the idea of everyone being like, I don't know what it's going to take to get people out there, because Facebook's actively silencing free speech every day.
Are you familiar with net neutrality?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, and like how that was it was revoked. I think it was revoked, and then that was upheld. That is so people forget about this or don't even know about it because it was a big deal. That was one of the things that it didn't matter what side you were on. Everybody agreed, but it still happened anyway.
Well, there's actually kind of a
that's scary too.
There's an argument to be made on the other side of it. We'll get in the weeds on that another time. But like, companies like Facebook and Google can afford any large company like that. They can afford huge, heavy, burdensome regulations that startups will never be able to compete with.
Right.
And so it's taken like this group of internet cowboys to start creating things like Bitcoin and things that have like. When more people understand like the tangible value of a decentralized currency that doesn't have a bank that can inflate or deflate the value of it.
Yeah.
which is what's all fucked up right now, because as soon as
A private bank that's called
as
the
soon
Fed.
as as soon as exactly, but like as soon as Goldman Sachs and everything, like, people were talking about how volatile Bitcoin is. Well, half of the reason is because we don't have the same rules for trading cryptocurrencies. They're starting to come along as we do for trading stocks and bonds. So it was so Goldman Sachs and all of these other giant banking companies would go in and they would just pump and dump, man. They would just run Bitcoin up and get everybody super excited. Everyone's like, "What is this new thing? I had Bitcoin when it was 0.0003 of a dollar."
You'd be killing if
And
you got
put their
that.
whole yeah, exactly. Well, and a lot of people did. Like, I mean, Bitcoin
yeah.
and Ripple. I mean, Ripple made a bunch of people millionaires from 2017 into the first part of 2018. If they sold out in January, man, like, they might have, if they bought in November on Ripple and they sold out in January, depending on what they bought, I mean, they 10,000 times their money.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
Damn.
it's some people just caught some rushes like that. But what happened was everybody rushed to it. A bunch of people made junk coins.
Yeah.
It's a wild west of currency, but there's going to be some that become stable.
Yeah.
And there's a new generation of kids that understand that if they want to speak freely on the internet and they want to engage in a free market on the internet, it's got to be decentralized. And so there's going to be some coins that come out that make all that possible. Steam, it's a platform that I'm a big fan of, but there's a couple of other ones, social media platforms where, every like is worth a Steemit coin. And whatever Steemit's value is,
Yeah, you have to be
it
seeing,
is what it is.
We'll figure that out. That's interesting. I have to do some
Yeah.
research into that.
Yeah. But people, if anybody can take anything away from that, your dad is worth a shitload.
Oh, fuck yeah, it is.
You're literally being mined. You personally are being mined by these large companies.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know it.
Don't have a clue.
Yeah. Well, damn, dude. Craig, you got heavy there for a second.
Fuck yeah, brother. Get in the weeds.
All right, brother. Tell the people they can check you out. All the cool shit you guys are doing with Hoosier Sophisticate, everything that's going on,
Totally.
sponsors, all that shit.
HoosierSophisticate.com. You can get pretty much all of our material there. Mycelial Media on YouTube, MyCelial Media. We go live every Monday night, about 6:30 to 7, somewhere in there. We need to really lock that in. But 6:30 to 7, somewhere in there, we go live for 2-3 hours, depending on how good the conversation is. There will always be some a solid smattering of psychedelic, cannabis, and dick joke talk. And then also on 1010 a.m., also 104.5 FM on Saturday mornings, 6 to 7 a.m., Hoosier Sophisticate. There'll be kind of some different content there, some more interviews and whatnot. But you can follow along. And then, our sponsors, I can shout them all out. James Carlton State Farm, he's the best State Farm agent in the game. Lifetime Roofing over in Webster Groves. If you need any exterior work, get done. And CBD Canvas Boutique Dispensary. They got 3 locations, De Pere, Arnold, and Maplewood. They got a nice little offering of different CBD products. I think that's pretty much everything.
Right on, dude.
Appreciate you, brother.
All
Had a
right,
good time.
Dude, always a good time. All right, everybody. Until next time.